So, we're taught from a young age that failure is something to avoid. Get good grades, make the right choices, follow the correct path. But then life happens, things go wrong, plans fall apart, and somehow the people who end up succeeding often seem to be the ones that fail the most along the way. So today, my dad and I are going to explore that uncomfortable question. Is failure actually necessary? Do we grow more from losing than winning? And how do we learn to see setbacks differently? Welcome to the Gen X Gen Z podcast. My name is Cheyenne, and with me, as always, my father, author and e-commerce entrepreneur. We've been having a lot of these conversations, just the two of us over the years, and we decided it was about time that we opened them up. So Baba, when you think about your own life, the things that went wrong, the failures, the setbacks, do you see them as something that held you back or something that helped shape who you are today?
Well, there have been periods of life where I kind of took failure to my heart and didn't kind of learn from it or became sad with it. And there have been times where I learned through mistakes and didn't repeat those mistakes. I think it was a learning process for me. So maybe in early times when I was a student or when I started working, I think that was the first time I kind of started building this system of understanding that how to learn from each failure and how to become better with it. I think the biggest example was when I invested in one of the supermarkets and we lost, I think, about 40% of the equity within 6 to 8 months. And the learning curve was that the number of people we were employing were too many. I think about 11 or 12 we were employing, so whereas we could have done with about 6 or 7 for the size of the business. I took that as a kind of learning curve, and in my future business, I realized that we were overly tight with number of people we would employ, and that was the game changer for us. So that was the single point which made our future business, the e-commerce one, far more successful. I mean, that is one example. There are plenty of others, I think, if I would dig down, which tell me that, okay, so I have learned from those.
That's, I mean, it's great to hear that there was a negative in your previous business, but you turned it into quite, from what it seems, a heavy positive into when pursuing your next venture. And some people do seem to bounce back well from failure. While others kind of crumble under that pressure and they tend to fall apart. What do you think makes that difference?
I think it's the mindset. Some people take failure as personal, or they kind of get sad over it, because I have gone through it very early in times, for example, when I was studying and all that, or just before I started work. But I think people who take failures as a learning curve or a way to understand things better than they thought before, they tend to perform a lot better. For example, I'll give you an example. I can't remember his name now, so he's the 4th richest UK person. And I was just watching his interview the other day. And he said he started in total 33 businesses. And out of those 33, 29 failed. And the four businesses which he succeeded in, kind of, one, they made up for those losses and of course made him the 4th richest person in UK. So the idea is that you shouldn't afraid to take action. So he carried on taking action because what fear of failure does is kind of, if you take it emotionally or personally, it kind of stops you from taking further action or strategizing or coming up with new ways of doing the same thing. I remember one of my coach at the hedge fund, he used to give this example that if you go around, especially on services and places like that, people will open up a restaurant and it will close down in maybe 6 months, or somebody else will come and they will open up, and it used to be the case back in, and that will close down, and maybe in 3 years' time, somebody at the same place, same type of restaurant, they'll open up and it will boom. It's just the way of doing things. It's the way they will strategize, do the management and all that. So it's never the weather's fault or the place fault or my manager's fault. It's you. If you would change through those failures and evolve as a different person, understood that what you have done, the way you have done it, was something which might have caused it. And sometimes, of course, timing can be an issue as well. So so understanding all the aspect, it's because each failure has a very multiple angles to be looked at. The trouble is that when people make small mistakes, for example, somebody couldn't cook properly, or whatever you were cooking that got burnt, so they will do it again. But when somebody lost a job or lost their spouse or marriage broke down, they take it overly. So, I mean, every situation is, at the end of the day, is a human situation. And each situation has something to give you to learn from and come up with new strategies to employ in the future.
No, that's a very interesting point you make there, where how you mentioned the restaurant example, and I do want to come back to that in more depth after. But for now, what kind of struck me initially with that point is that there was an individual who, not just the restaurant example, also you mentioned the UK CEO example, that, what did you say,
29 of them got failed
29.
and 4 businesses
Wow.
became successful. Yeah.
See, that's very interesting, because I notice a lot of the time, even myself, I fall into this habit. I notice among my peers, when failure hits someone, they do tend to give up quite quickly. Other people see it as a challenge, and like the person you mentioned, they grow from that. Do you think a person can actually learn to see failure differently, or is that just how we're born?
No, that's not the case. We should never think that anything, whether it is more intellect or less intellect. So, of course, you can improve on. So, genetics, of course, play a part, 25 to 40%. But the rest of it is our own environment, plus how we perceive things and how we take action, how kind of dedicated we are to do something which we want to do. The way we perceive failure is not something which is innate in us. It's something, okay, it can be given through environment, or we had certain experiences in our young age, so that can have an influence. But once you have grown up and you have seen the world, and so you need to develop that independent way of thinking, that how to deal with situations when they come up, and especially the failure, and not get knocked back from them, but come and I think with each type of failure, when you see that as something I might have done differently which has caused it, rather than blaming anybody else or the situation, or so even if there is a situation, so your assessment of the situation would not have been right. So if you take responsibility for all the actions which led to a failure, then you will walk them back and then understand that which particular step actually caused me this failure. And then in the future, you won't take that step. So I think that's the way things go.
Yeah, that's a golden lesson there for sure. Taking responsibility and accountability is very important. And it leads me actually again, so the second point I wanted to mention regarding the restaurant and the CEO individual is that oftentimes people kind of, they fear failure, of course, but they see those that have become successful, for example, that UK CEO, people wouldn't be looking at the 29 businesses that he's failed. They'd be looking at the 3 or 4 that have succeeded. And there's almost this misconception that it's kind of a smooth road for everyone. No, it's a smooth road for those that have succeeded. Is that really the case? Because right now you're kind of saying that even the restaurant owner and the
maybe
CEO
this
sometimes.
example I'm going to give is, so many people has given this example, but then again, very relevant to your question. Mm-hmm. Steve Jobs started Apple in 1976. And in 1985, when he actually was working on Macintosh, and that didn't work or didn't do as much business as he thought it would. So he was forced out of Apple because of the failure in Macintosh. So 9 years of work, he ended up losing Apple. Well, then he started another company called Next. and which was again software development, and he carried on working with Next for next 12 years. And all the funders of Next lost their money. It didn't work out the way he thought it would work out. So first 9 years of failures, another 12 years in Next that failed. In 1997, Steve Jobs came back to Apple and sold Next to Apple. So whatever development they had or technology they have developed in Next eventually made Apple I think it was iMac, which was the most famous product initially in 1998. So now if somebody will look at Steve Jobs, they would say, okay, his choice to come back in Apple in 1997 is the one which made him what he became. But it wasn't that. It was all those 9 years, the first one and the 12 years, and the things he did, and the perseverance he had, and the relentlessness, and all the choices and decisions, and then re-strategizing and rethinking. So all that experience and exposure and sticking to it, the will, eventually made him what he was in 1997 and 98. So of course, people normally see, as you said, this person, the 4 businesses he became successful in. So people would only see the success side of the story, or what made somebody famous. People would see that. But there is a long history of hard work and those sad nights, or maybe kind of crunchy kind of moments where you had to think hard on yourself, that what now, what to do this way or how. So of course, when you are looking at things from progression point of view, so you have to take them very seriously, and you have to go through all the different kind of journeys to get somewhere where you actually, then the destination is always get kind of lost upon, but the journey always have its rocks and bumpy roads.
I really like that perspective. You're basically saying he had to take the wrong steps to kind of get where he was. And again, it brings me back to that point that fear of failure, the fear being the key word of failure there, is something that is holding a lot of people back from, learning from those wrong steps. Like I mentioned in the intro, especially from a young age, we're told to make sure you get the correct grades and choose your path from early on and stick to that path. But it seems like learning about, what to do when you stray away from that path is just as important as choosing the right path. So do you believe that in order to be successful, because you've mentioned a lot of great successful examples, in order to be successful, is failure paramount, or is it possible to avoid it entirely?
Well, I wouldn't know anyone who wouldn't have failed in their life to become whatever they, especially the one who are really successful people. So failure, if you see, failure as a name kind of sounds very daunting, but it's just experience. I normally call it the life is a road which has a straight path and then the bumps in it, and the straight path and the bumps in it. And I believe that in every single individual's life, whether whatever stage, status, success they are at, they go through similar pattern. The straight road, the bumps, straight road, the bumps. So it's the bumps, you can call them failures. When the way you think things will work out, they don't work out. And the people who succeed are the ones who during those bumps sit down and strategize and see that, okay, the path they have chosen, how to amend it, how to make new choices, and then see what is not going right. The ones who get fearful of those bumps may kind of give up on the first bump or the third bump. So end of the day, the perception and the mindset, how you see those failures or bumps. Failure is can sometimes seen as a very strong thing, but it's not. It's just another bump. If you start seeing them as just another bump, then you become more resilient to them maybe. And I think mostly the people who succeed in life see it that way.
That's a very practical gem as well, for sure, that one needs to just
Yes.
take a bump as it is and move on to
Yes.
the next, because it can be daunting. It can be very daunting, especially I know amongst my generation, my peers. Even me myself right now, I'm about to start a new career, inshallah soon, and failure is scary. So you don't want to fail in the first few days of your new role. But you're right, you just have to take it as it comes and learn from it. Um, but what I want to do now is one of our usual segments that we've done previously that I like to call the trade-off segment.
Okay.
So again, I'm going to give you two options between one thing and another, and I just want you to choose one of them and kind of explain maybe why you've chosen that. So would you rather choose playing it safe and never failing, or taking risks and failing often?
Well, in my lifetime, I have taken risks and didn't fail as much, to be honest with you. I mean, I had very less failures in my life, especially in my practical life since I started working or businesses. One was the main lesson I just mentioned, the investment in a supermarket. But most of the time I would take risk, and most of the time it will work out. So I would take risk still. I would take risk rather than, risk I would call risk rather than I will call it action. I'll take action considering a situation, or if I see an opportunity, I will take action and go for it. And then I will strategize, of course, and most of the time, luckily, the small businesses I had, they worked out. My strategy kind of luckily worked out. Or if it didn't work out, for example, in the first 3 months or 6 months or a year, so I waited for it to work out. So I kind of aligned and re-strategized, and that's how every single time, whichever business or other situations I had in my life. So my policy always have been, okay, so we set out to do, for example, if you are set out to go from here to point A to point B, and in between you thought, okay, you'll get there in 2 hours, but you didn't get there in 2 hours or 2 years, then you just, work out what is not letting us get there where we want to get to. So I kind of stuck to it, and that kind of reduced the number of failures I had.
No, that's great. I like how you've also kind of said that you don't see it as a risk, you see it as action.
Yes.
It's quite a proactive mindset there as well. And the second one, learning from your own failures or learning from other people's?
Well, I think learning from other people's failure is the best way to go. One way I would see that is this, that whatever project or whatever kind of inspiration or action you want to take, it's all during your research process, that how you would do it, and when you're making your initial plan and strategy. So that is the time you want to see all the other failures and all the other successes. Because I know people would love to hear whatever, say if somebody wants to start any kind of business. I remember even when we the failure one, the supermarket one I just mentioned. Or if say, for example, I know so many people started e-commerce when we were successful. So they would hear that successful story. They'll see, okay, whatever car or house or whatever this person has, so he must be successful, and what he does, okay, he's doing this business, people will start doing that. It's easy to fall into that trap. I think it's best to hear the failure stories. Or now, because of the internet and YouTube and so many other places, you can find failure stories. And of course, you can research through the published papers or other places you can find and learn from those that what they have not done right in their situation, which you can do better. So I think, yes, so spending time on each project earlier on, learning from whatever else have done, I think that's the best way to go.
Yeah, you're completely right there as well. A lot of people, even myself, as soon as you hear someone successful in something, you want to hear everything that's gone right. But like you mentioned, it is important for sure to have a look at what's wrong. And I think all that takes is just a mind shift, basically.
Yes.
And a lot of the things you're saying, one, it's awakening a lot of things in me because I haven't thought of failure in this way properly before. You're kind of seeing failure as something that's actually quite crucial to success. And I feel like you have that perception more so because you've run businesses before. This is something that you've had to take into account through a major part of your,
Yes, yes.
successful career life. How many failures would you say it took you until you found success?
In my case, I was lucky. So, I was standing on a bus stop, waiting for the bus, and it started raining.
Yeah.
And I just walked across, and there was this hedge fund looking for people. And so I applied for the job, and so I got in. And luckily, that was very successful from get-go. I think because that was my first job, and when you're trading, so there's, of course, you are taught that way that there's a situation called cut loss. So if you take a position, you take position every day or every week, at least few positions you would take, and some of those positions would go against you. So you take each position as a business. So you made a strategy that you will invest an investor's 100,000 or 1 million, whatever the lot size is. And you would make, say, and use 20% or 10%, whatever you strategize, and market will go that way. And it didn't go that way, and it went against you. So then again, you would have a plan that if it came here, so you will cut the loss, take the loss and go back. So you'll stay disciplined rather than losing a lot of money. So because that was my profession for a good few years, so I learned how to take risk and be prepared to take the loss. So I think that kind of, from very young age, became my perception of risk. So each risk has a measured amount of risk at the bottom, and if you can take it further up, so it can go really high. So that's how I saw the practicality of others, the practical businesses as well, and they normally have a lot lesser risk. I think that could have been the reason I really, other than this investment in supermarket, which was somebody else was running it, I was just an investor. And all the, I think, businesses which I did myself personally, none of them failed. And I think it was just that I always, because especially when you are as a trader, you always have to assess loss first. When I say always, check how the failures in each business, what failed people. So same way. So I learned that earlier on. So how would I float in this water? That's the first thing. Why wouldn't I drown? So that's how you. I think that's the strategy which helped me to avoid failures.
Yeah, mashallah. What I like to hear there especially is that, because this is kind of a topic we might go into a different episode, but I feel like you do maybe see part of it as luck, but I've always believed that luck isn't given, it's something you create for yourself. And I think your clear strategy here for creating that luck was that you looked beforehand what the failures were.
Yes.
And they say quite a lot as well, when you have fears, write them down, it shrinks down the fears. I think failure being one of those fears, you wrote it down, you strategized it, and it kind of shrinks it down for you ahead, which is a great strategy, and I think it's something that I'm definitely going to implement going forward now as well.
I just wanted to, something came to my mind, and I just wanted to mention this. I think one thing which, if you can internalize this, anyone, that what you are bringing to a particular situation, because I used to think this, that what will happen, so if I'm investing something somewhere or starting a business, it's the money I have made. So if I lose it, so I'll go back where I was, and I was comfortable with that. If you can accept yourself wherever you are, the ability of acceptance, so your anxiety of what will happen, I might fail, goes a lot down. Because if you, say for example, if you have decided that you want to make £1 million in 3 years' time, and you're going to invest £50,000 to get there. Now imagine that you think of it, what if I lost £50,000? If you accepted that, that'll be okay, so then I'll be there. So I can live with that. So if you accepted that, you're fine. You will never tumble, you will never feel that anxiousness that what will happen. So if you will go further, so you'll go further. So the worst you have already accepted. So I think it's the anxiousness most of the time kind of increase the risk of becoming a failure, because people become too kind of attached to their expectations.
Now that's again another great gem there. It's just essentially what I guess you're trying to say is accept that the worst might happen from the get-go, and it reduces that fear in the future. And that's, yeah, it's a great point. And often, obviously, a lot of these practical steps is kind of the practical steps you want to take before getting into a venture. However, as you mentioned, people like Steve Jobs, and I'm sure there's a lot of other CEOs of companies, they went through failures also during the process. Like what you mentioned when he went from Macintosh to Next. Next was a bit of a, one of them was a bit of a failure, and then, but he bounced back from it. Why do you think people like that, like Steve Jobs, like CEOs of other companies, they've clearly gone through a lot of failures throughout the processes. Why don't they just give up?
It's just that's the thing. So it's the mindset. It's the way you approach. Because, you know, a person who is thinking of moving, they don't see that as failures. As I said before, they see as they've taken these actions, and the results they thought will come, didn't come, and they strategize and they understand, they kind of see, do an audit, what went wrong. And they understand, okay, whatever has failed them was that. So they won't repeat those type of mistakes. And at the same time, for example, Steve Jobs' case, so he was growing as a person. So he grew as a person. He made money with it as well. But he just got pushed out because the venture which he was working on during the time didn't kind of work out. Or there were other kind of internal pressure must have been. Same way if Next didn't work out, but then again, he felt that and the same with not just Steve Jobs, with every other successful person. So they don't see failure as them just failed. It's failure because certain things didn't work out. Say if you had employed 100 different strategies or way of doing things on a project, and 5 of them were quite pivotal to make it successful, and 3 of those ones didn't work out. It could be a wrong employee, it could be other factors. So they understand that some of the things, what actually caused the failure. So they can avoid that in the future. So that keeps them going. So their resentment comes from the vision. They know that they can get there, but there are certain things along the way which have failed them. But that doesn't mean that they don't believe that they can get there where they wanted to go. So it's the vision has to be there.
I see. So that vision is there from the get-go, essentially.
Yes.
And you know, so you mentioned obviously they and yourself as well overcome that failure through that vision. But how do you separate failures themselves and the actual fear of failure?
Yes, you know, the fear is problematic stuff. So fear, I think, is the biggest hindrance to personal development. Whether it's fear of acceptance, fear of missing out, fear of not getting successful or not getting what you want, and again, fear of failure. So I think that is something people have to work on themselves. Whether it's through education, through reading, through parenting, so from very start, so getting rid of fear is the most fundamental issue. Failure is exactly the same type of fear you have from other things. So it needs to be worked on, and it is not the best thing to have. And your question is whether I think that the fear of failure or failure itself causes, because fear of failure will kind of hinder the action. So you won't take action, you won't start something. And again, if you're still fearful and you took action because of social pressure, or somebody said, okay, you are not a successful businessman, why you are not making money, or why you're not taking any job. So you took a risk and took a job which you didn't want to do. Or you're not getting married and people are giving you pressure that, okay, you're not finding a girl, and you kind of rushed into and found a wrong girl for yourself. So those type of things will lead to failure. If you are working on, again, it's the end of the day, taking responsibility, working on yourself, understanding it's you who will be the captain of the ship. It's your will, your understanding, your perception, your way of thinking, which will make the failure a success. So whatever is causing you that anxiety or fear, you need to fix that first. And then failure or those bumps will still come in every single type of venture. They will come. But when you're clear, you're not fearful, you will know, okay, the bumps will come and I will re-strategize. Then there won't be a problem. I think the chances of getting failed would become lesser. And again, then you won't see them as failures. So you will see them as learning and doing things in another way.
You're spot on there a lot, because I've noticed this a lot of the time with my peers and people amongst my generation. There has been quite a push now towards people wanting to essentially create their own business, set up passive income, kind of get out of that 9 to 5 through self-employment, and the main step of kind of getting out of that, essentially maybe it could be for some people wanting to get out of that 9 to 5, is that you need to take action, like you said, and it's the fear of failure, which is spot on, is what's stopping and hindering a lot of people from taking that action in the first place. Because I think a lot of the time we see obstacles in the way, and we're like, maybe all these things are going to come in the way, so it's gonna hinder me from. So I may as well just leave it. I may as well not even try at all. But there is an idea that the obstacle itself can help move the path forward. So what does that actually mean in real life?
People who are a lot more resilient than commoners, they see obstacle as the way, they call it. So you have to go through wherever, for example, the bump comes, that is the way. So that kind of tells you the direction of your success. So that is a good, I think it's Marcus Aurelius. Yeah.
Marcus Aurelius.
Yeah, he mentioned that the obstacle is the way. So go through it. Yeah, some people see it that way. So whenever you kind of get abstracted from the path you are going to, so the obstruction becomes, okay, the focal point, okay, so I need to pass through it. And I think somebody else was mentioning this, that when you have, the fear, see them as, for example, he was seeing that as walls. And so the bigger the wall you break, so the threshold gets lesser. So then you think, okay, now, so I've broken this wall. The next one that's smaller than that won't matter, so I can break the rest of them to get where I want to go. It's just the mindset of not taking any obstacle as obstacle, but taking as a challenge to go through them. That's I think.
You're right. Marcus Aurelius, I think, puts it the best of you just need to go through it. Can you think of a time when a problem you faced actually opened a door for you rather than closed it?
Yes, for example, there's a small example, but recently we invested in one of those apartments and it wasn't working out. And there was stay and all that kind of stuff. And then...
Sorry, where was the apartment?
The apartment we bought in Islamabad.
Right.
And the Supreme Court took a stay and it didn't work out for a couple of years. And I think you mentioned that, okay, should we not try to look for something else? And we bought this big piece of land for a much kind of cheap price. And that grew 3-4 times in a few years. So yes, so the partner was a failure and this was the big success. And because of that failure, we had to choose this particular. And in my personal life, there are plenty of times where I really wanted to force myself through a particular situation. That, okay, I want to get there. And it is not happening. And it's not happening. And within that kind of forced direction which I'm trying to go towards, something else comes up. because I'm working on on something, so some other direction kind of comes from all the effort. And so of course I got the blockage. I couldn't go the way I thought I should be going to, but this new direction kind of provided a big success. I'll give you an example. For example, Vodafone in early 90s, they were trying to, they invested a big amount of money to try to develop video phone calling. Okay, while they were working on it, and this kind of made an app which was easy to make to do the text messaging. They thought why would people spend time people texting each other? And it took them a few years to develop this video calling, and all the investment failed because the video calling didn't work. People didn't like video calling. But the text messaging became the thing. So it exploded, and all the money they spent on video calling, so they kind of made from text messaging. So action sometimes doesn't take you exactly what you envisaged, but it opened doors for you in many other ways. So this is why I always say action is the most important thing. So you should have, of course, action shouldn't be random. You should have strategy, and when you are going on the path, what you have chosen to get somewhere, so then if you have your eyes and ears open and you're seeing other opportunities in that, because when you're digged in, when you're trenched into your project, so of course new avenues of your mind open up, and you can see other things which you otherwise wouldn't have, especially in the action mode, and then you can take opportunity from those.
No, that's great. That's like, it's putting a silver lining around a very dark cloud that the obstacle might be. And one of those dark clouds, obviously more recently in times, was COVID. We saw, unfortunately, a lot of people lost their lives during COVID. A lot of people were in lockdown, staying at home, and it created a lot of fear. However, I felt like a lot of people saw opportunity in COVID as well. So in terms of growing their businesses, a lot of people started creating content and becoming really successful in that. How did some people see opportunity in something like COVID, and others, while others only basically just saw fear?
Yeah, even ourselves, so we were in e-commerce business and COVID came, and I remember we had two of our main competitors who they kind of started earlier than us. We started in 2010, and I think one of them started in 2008. Well, and they were doing slightly better than us. I remember one of them stopped ordering stuff because of the COVID, and the other one carried on, but not as aggressively. And it was, I think, the first lockdown when Boris announced on TV, Boris Johnson, the Prime Minister of UK. And I was sitting on my PC going through the spreadsheets thinking, okay, what strategy should we do? And decided, no, we should go heavy because, of course, there'll be other people who will be fearful now to import, and thinking. So I checked with suppliers and they were all okay, and we just went all the way. And that was the best strategy. So I think in the first 2 years, so the business kind of went at least 6-7-fold. Yes. So, and since then, kind of, so it worked a lot better than any time earlier than COVID. Yes, so I think any kind of new situation or sometime disasters, I mean, they are bad. Of course, they provide, they bring a lot of pain for humanity. And just seeking opportunity in them is not sometimes the only best way to look at them. But from business point of view, when people, wherever you are and the kind of business you're in, people try to take, if not advantage, but strategize in a way that they can serve their customers or whatever business they are in, but at the same time kind of go ahead of times. For example, there was a time in earthquake happened, and I remember somebody speaking to me that there's an opportunity to start the construction side of things.
Talking about the
earthquake in Pakistan it was. And they did, and they became very successful in it. So, when financial crisis 2008 happened, a lot of people, banks kind of gone bust, but a lot of people took that opportunity to build businesses. And then going forward, the market crash, the property crash of 2008. And people who started in 2010, and they made really good progress and built a lot of equity in their housing stocks. So yes, so whenever something like that big, COVID or financial crisis, so people lose money, and some people, of course, who are visionaries or who are willing to take calculated risk and less fearful of it, do make choices which bring them success.
I think that's a great example again of practicing what you're preaching essentially there, the COVID example.
Yes,
that despite a lot of fear from even competitors, you kind of put it all in there, and you didn't let that fear of failure hold you back essentially.
Of course not. No.
So we're going to do a segment now called Lessons of Life. I'm going to ask you a question, and I just want you to give me one answer based off of this question. What is one mistake you've seen people make over and over when they face failure?
I think they become consumed by thinking that who to blame for their failure. I think that's a mistake. So when we're seeing failure as lack of strategy or something you have done, you couldn't plan as well as you should have, and then you re-strategize and overcome even the fear of success in the next step. But when you blame others and don't take responsibility for the failure, then you can't strategize either, because you think, okay, this happened because that person did this, or the weather was not good, or that other situation. But yeah, taking responsibility of it is the best thing, and blaming other situations or things or people or is something I feel that is the worst thing.
That's interesting, because that's something that's still very relevant even amongst my generation as well. That accountability often is what holds people back. They're not able to understand that their failure was themselves, and they're constantly attaching it to others, and that's kind of what's holding them back a lot of the time in taking action or taking the right action. That's a very interesting point. So speaking of my generation, what's one thing you've learned about failure that you wish you knew about at my age?
I think I was a bit more pro-risk in your age, because there's an appetite of taking risk a bit more in younger people than it is in older people. So I was a lot more risk averse. I was willing to take risk, and I have become a bit more risk averse now. So in terms of about failure, what I would have known back then, maybe, but I normally say that I was lucky not to have certain kind of failure, because I would just take risks just like that. But it worked out. And what I know now, so I think, plan better. I will do all the things which I mentioned earlier, that I will look into other people's mistakes, and I'll research better, dig deep into the existing examples of what I want to do, and how other people are doing it, and who are successful, and how the people who became unsuccessful, what did they do? When I was younger, I didn't do as much research into things as I would do now, or I do now. Yeah, that's one thing I will do.
It's interesting you mentioned that how, which is common obviously at a younger age, you do tend to take more risks. However, I'm in that kind of young age right now where people are taking risks. So sometimes I feel a bigger proportion of my generation's population is more averse to risk taking than others. What is it that those others have that kind of is pushing them to take risks that the others don't?
Okay, the way or whatever my exposure is, if I judge according to that, I find majority of population or in human race are risk averse than risk takers. I would say maybe 5 to 10% people are good at taking risk, and good 90% I mean, for just normal relationship thing, people would try to avoid difficult conversations. People would try to avoid anything which kind of cause short-term pain. It's just the way I think we are. And there are certain people who just happen to have more appetite for taking risk. I know when I was young, I used to hear this a lot, that some people are built for business and some are not. I don't know. Over time, I have happened to believe that anything can be learned, and it's just a mindset you have adopted, and so once you question it, whatever belief system you have in terms of risk or fears, as soon as you change that belief system, what is fearful and what is not, your risk appetite will change, and again the fear of failure appetite will change with that. So I think it can be changed, but of course there are some people who are naturally at the age of 18 or 16 are more pro-risk than others.
No, you're right. Some people, of course, have that natural skill set, but it is nice to hear that it's not something that's fixed. You can change that, of course, over time. So, Baba, when obviously you've experienced some form of failure, and you've mentioned obviously a lot of the time that action is needed to be taken in order to push through the obstacle, and at the same time also creating one's mindset so that before the failure even comes, they have safety nets in place or an action plan in place, essentially. But when failure actually hits, what is the first thing you do? Is it change how you see it or change what you do about it?
Both. First of all, you need to have the perception right. You should not see it as failures. You should see it as the failure of a strategy. So you wanted to go from here to whatever place, so the route you have taken is the wrong one. So you might have taken right or left from a particular place which you didn't do. So that's why you have failed to reach where you wanted to. So you should go back and take that left or right wherever you needed to take it. Whenever the failure happens or things doesn't work out the way you thought it will work out, so once you walk back on your pathway, so you will find out, everybody does find out that what has gone wrong. And sometimes you might find out that the whole thing was wrong, the whole expectation of getting there was wrong. So keeping open from the get-go, from the thing which you have, your main vision that, okay, I want to go from, say, what if there's a business you are developing, or you are starting a new hospital, for example, and you're thinking that, okay, this many people would do this way or that way. Or new surgery, for example, and the type of people you'll employ, or the type of place you'll have, and how many patients will come in, for example, in your case. And that vision of yours, from that first point to then, okay, what location you'll have your surgery in, or how many patients will visit you, or how much staff you'll have. If you keep that in check all the time, so you made your plan, you thought this will happen, stay open to change each one of it according to the situation when you actually see it. So you may have thought, okay, if I'll open there, so that particular location B79 will be the best place, but you couldn't find the right priced place to open a surgery there. And there was a kind of good place, reasonably priced, good location, a good community surrounding in another postcode. And then you kind of re-strategize and see in that particular postcode how that will work. So if you're open to that adjustment from day one, and then there will be other things which won't work out along the way, even once it opens up, maybe that number of patients don't come in the way you thought they would. And then you re-strategize your marketing strategy, or your staff is not performing the way you would want them to perform. So you re-strategize or re-employ or whatever. So it's kind of, if you're open and knowing that all the things which you initially thought they would work out may not work out, then in most cases In 90% cases, that happens, that they do not work out the same way as you initially think. Your project is fine. Your thinking of having a surgery for patients is fine. So that is workable. It's just the way of doing it is, of course, your initial plan may not be exactly the one which makes it successful. So when you're open to that, so then things do work out.
Now that's, I think that'll kind of provide a source of relief for quite a lot of people, that sometimes we do everything, we think we've done everything right, but it's still not working out. And what you're saying is you just need to take a step back and re-strategize, essentially. So yeah, that's definitely a source of relief. So throughout this kind of discussion, one of the biggest essentially failures that you've mentioned quite clearly is the failure of not taking action.
Yes.
Why would you say the failure of not taking action is worse than actually failing itself?
Yeah, so I normally say that the not taking action is the biggest failure of all. Because what I know, say for example, if you wanted to become a doctor, and if you never kind of took the subjects you want, which would lead to it, so you took some actions to become whatever you have become. Or if somebody wanted to start a particular type of business, or they always thought about it, but never took action, and they carried on, okay, I don't like my job, I don't want to quit it and they never took action. So of course they would regret it some point in their life, that okay, they should have done this, or they should have done that. In the same way, people, somebody else was mentioning the other day that people with all type of choices, people will have a friend of mine had a girlfriend, so she's fitting in with the friendship group, and all the people surrounding him like her, so he doesn't like her that much, but it's safe to stay. So people play safe. The kind of job you have, your manager is no good, this type of job you don't want to do, but okay, it's paying my wages and I want to stick to it. And even 10 years on, you're not liking it, but you want to stick with it. But there are others who just they just find out whatever they want to do, they take action and then go for it. So that's why I normally say that whatever you think is good for you, and which can, not kind of blindly taking risks, when you have some vision for it which can work for you and you have done your research, then jump for it. And you will never, in 90% cases, whichever project you will start, the way you have planned, it won't work out. Stay open, but it will work out. But not doing it at all, you would regret it. So that's why I say that not taking action is the worst failure.
So Baba, just to finish it off, if you could leave my generation with one thought about failure, something to remember when things go wrong, because a lot of people are taking that next step now, including myself, where failure can be daunting. So what would that piece of advice be?
The piece of advice will be that never fear the failure. Whatever you want to do and you have some sort of vision for it, go for it. Plan for it, strategize for it, research it, learn about it as much as you can. Try to be master of it from learning point of view. But whatever learning, and remember this, that how much ever you learn and how much ever research you have done, it would still, the practical part of it, the action side, it will be a lot different than what you have learned. But you will have all that information in your back of your head when you take action. And then you'll be able to re-strategize accordingly when things would go wrong. So the message will be that don't fear. Leave fear behind, take action, and never even change language. Never call it failure. Call it a bump. And there will be loads of bump in your life, in every one of you. So just learn to re-strategize at the time of those bumps, rethinking, finding new ways to pass through it, for each bump, and never making the mistakes you have already made. Make new mistakes, don't repeat the same mistakes.
I don't think that could be put any better. Thank you so much, Dad. So clearly, failure maybe isn't something that we need to run from. It's how we choose to see it, what we do next, and the will to keep going that actually shapes who we become. The biggest failure of all isn't falling down. It's refusing to get back up. Thank you for listening.